Hello, I just discovered this really cool thing, and I think you should hear it. And it's my favorite kind of cool thing, taking something practically useless and making it less useless. Alright, so here's the idea. The useless thing previously mentioned is the touching color blank block. Wouldn't that make a fun tongue twister? Touching color blank block, touching color blank block, touching color blank block, touching color blank block. Actually it's not that fun. And this trick doesn't just work for the touching color blank block. It also works for the color blank is touching blank block. But enough of that, let's get on to the actual trick. So, as you probably know by now, the touching color blank block, when you touch the color button, it brings up a color picker selector on your stage so that you can touch a color on your stage, and then the block will sense if the sprite is touching that color. But that's pretty self-explanatory. Most scratch blocks work like that. Personally, I've never used this block in an actual project because I think it's for like pen users, but who understands those pen users? You're a pen user? Get out of here. No, I'm just kidding. Without further ado, here's how to actually do the trick. So you select the color picker, and then you move it all the way to the edge of the stage, just so it's off screen. And through the color picker peephole magnifying glass, you can now see like a centimeter off screen. Ta-da! That's the trick. That's all there is to it. So for those of you complaining that Scratch's screen is too small, you can now see a few centimeters off screen through a small window, only one section of the edge at a time, and you have to be in the project editor. I see this as an incredibly useful discovery. Alright, so maybe it is a bit useless, but it's still cool that you're able to see even a small amount off the stage, because I thought the whole point of the stage was that it hides things that aren't on the stage so that it can save, like, memory or something. Though what do I know? I'm just a fool who discovered it. This has been Billy Necho's Rant, and I hope you were educated. A while back, I covered the Olympics. I decided to do it at the time because it only comes around like every other year, so I'd have to wait like a long time in order to do one about the Olympics again. Unfortunately, I was mistaken. There's actually a sequel to the Olympics. I was not aware of this. It's called the Winter Olympics, and it's like the normal Olympics, but, you know, ice and stuff. The Winter Olympics features such key sports as skiing, sledding, skiing, sledding, skiing, and sledding. And while that is obviously not all of them, most of them are just variations of skiing and sledding. And that's not a bad thing either. Bobsledding is pretty cool. You and a few other people sit in a long tube and then slide along the wall like Spider-Man. That's cool. Another sport that caught my eye was called skeleton. It's pretty much just going down the slide the way your mom tells you not to. And it looks incredibly dangerous, which is probably why it's called skeleton. I also found it amusing how if someone comes out the like gold medal winner of skeleton, then the headline would be blank claims women's skeleton. The person in that headline could go over to her friends and say, yeah, I went to China and I got the women's skeleton. Oh yeah, the Olympics takes place in like different places every single time. And apparently they have to build a new stadium if it's in a new place, which is crazy. Well, I mean, obviously they'd have to build a new stadium, but those stadiums are really big. So like that automatically disqualifies like half the countries of the world from ever hosting the Olympics. Oh, you want to be with the cool kids and host the Olympics? Well, too bad. Get out of here, Rhode Island. You aren't even an island. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up my thoughts on the Olympics. This has been Billy Necho's Rant, and I hope you enjoyed. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. It's been a year since the last one, but has it really felt like a year? Yes, definitely. But in that time, things have changed. I now have a strong understanding of graphic design. And I know right now that if you're watching this, you're probably thinking, all this white is so bright, it's hurting my eyes. But here's the solution. Is this better? You like this better? Is this pattern of lights more easy for your eyes to take in? Because if so, then you're probably experiencing today's topic. Sorry, we can't have any of that bright white here. It doesn't exactly fit. What I was trying to say is, why does it seem that people love dark mode so much? I mean, sure, it's easier on the eyes, but it completely contradicts the whole, like, animal thing. Humans and squirrels are animals. And animals naturally fear the dark, because you don't know if there might be, like, predators or something in the dark. And if you think that we've evolved past that primitiveness, then you're wrong. Take a look at movies, for example. Why are they called that? Whoa, it's so cool that they move. They're movies. Like, seems kind of a simple thing to call them. Obviously they move, and it's not a secret how they move. It just seems like if some high school kid invented movies, and he showed them to his friends, and was like, hey guys, check out my movie. Whoa, it moves? Yeah, it moves, it's a movie. Back to what I was actually talking about. The natural fear of the dark you'd think that would mean that dark mode would be like neglected. People don't like the dark. Dark bad. But no, dark on a screen, good. Dark in real life, bad. I think it's probably because if something's dark on the screen, then there can't be any predators hiding there, because it's not real. But that brings up a new question. Why do people get scared of things on a screen if they can't hurt you? Wait a minute, it's Valentine's Day. Why am I talking about the psychology of fear? Let's move this back into something more thematically appropriate. Love, and candy, and hug, hug, hug. This has been Billy Ninja's Rant. Go share the love. Hi, today's a very special day. Yesterday, while thinking of my plans for what I was going to talk about tomorrow, I decided that today I was going to talk about something that I normally wouldn't talk about. Usually I talk about things that I'm interested in, but today I figured why not talk about something I'm not interested in, just to switch it up a bit. So today I figured I'd talk about boats, something I'm definitely not interested in. But today's the 22nd of February 2022, so that means the date is 2/2/2/2022. So I need a new way to incorporate the number 2 with boats. I'm not an expert on boats, so this was difficult. However, I do pay attention in school, so today I figured we'd talk about a boat fight. This particular boat fight took place in the American Civil War, which was a war that would decide if slavery would continue or not. Luckily, it didn't continue. The people who were against slavery were in the North, and the people who were in favor of slavery were in the South. And that's all the background information you need for this story. During these times, warships were pretty much just sailboats with like cannons and stuff. Pretty lame. The North dudes and the South dudes, they needed a way to fight each other more better on water. So they thought, how about we take a ship and we put like armor on it? So the North guys made a boat that looks like this. And the South guys said, hey, that's a cool design. Mind if we also do that? And they made a boat that looks like this. The South guys called their ship the Merrimac, but they also liked slavery, so I guess it was not so Merrimac. The Monitor had a very cool spinny turret thing at the top, so I think it had the better design. But who cares about design? Let's see war functionality. Let's have a reenactment of the fight right now. Boom, pew, boom, pew, boom, pew, boom, pew. Yep, that's pretty much what happened. Turns out the two boats were too powerful, and neither of which could break each other's armor. The fight went on like that for a few days, I think, and then they just both sort of gave up. These ships were obviously very good at fighting stuff, which is why they were given the cool name Ironclad. So that's the story of the fight where the two armies did exactly the same thing, and it ended up in a draw. Who could have guessed that? I guess America hadn't heard of rock, paper, scissors. I hope you found this story interesting, because it's the only remotely interesting thing I know about boats. This has been Billy Ninja's Rant, and I hope you enjoyed. Recently at school, I've noticed the newest trend among people. If I were to theorize what that next big trend would be, I definitely would not have guessed a word puzzle game, because everyone seems to be playing this new game called Wordle. I think it's so popular because it's basically just a crossword puzzle, but for people with short attention spans. But maybe the crossword similarity is not why it's so popular, because generally, when you think of someone doing a crossword puzzle, you think of older people, not young people. But age does not seem to be a variable, as students and teachers all over the world are playing this game. Oddly enough, the same students who complain about having too much English homework. So I guess it must be doing something right. Also, I'd like to add, if you are watching this on YouTube, then this is the point chronologically where I started uploading these to YouTube. Do what you want with that information. However, by the time you are watching this on YouTube, it would have already been past the time I started uploading this to YouTube. So I guess the timelines are fractured. Forever 10 or more episodes apart.
Wait, so you're saying that these are 10 at a time? I haven't been in the last 10. That means that this is my first appearance. And if the person watching hasn't seen any others, then this is my first ever appearance.
Well, I'm sure this new audience will get a perfect understanding of your character. This is what you always do.
Yeah. You're right. I should do what I always do. Alright, how's this for an idea? I show up, interrupt you, say something off topic, and then leave. Hey, stop. How are they supposed to get that reference if they haven't seen the previous episodes? Just like you said earlier, people have short attention spans. You can't expect them to sit through hours of stuff just to get that one reference.
You're right. We can't have you making sense. That would not be an accurate representation of your character for new viewers. Therefore, this has been Billy Ninja's Rant, and I hope you enjoyed. The topics for the last few rants have been pretty spontaneous, so I'm here today to give you a more concrete performance. Construction vehicles are a fascinating thing. Giant yellow machines created for creating. For example, a cement mixer. A truck with a big rotating drum in the back that mixes cement. And it's a good thing the thing rotates too, because otherwise you just have a giant concrete egg mold, which is not necessarily a terrible thing to have. I like to imagine that's how the giant red balls outside of Target were created. Also on the same side of creation are dump trucks. Quite lovable looking machines, with giant wheels and a tiny little cockpit. It's like a working caricature of a truck. Sure, building things can be fun, but the machines I'm most interested in are the stuff designed to destroy things. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. Everyone enjoys a good show. It can take months to build something, which is pretty boring to watch. However, it only takes a few seconds to knock something down, which is much more entertaining. A crane with a wrecking ball is probably the most used example in a cartoon, because it's kind of silly. Who would have think to knock something down with what's essentially a big fishing pole? Wrecking ball cranes get all sorts of attention, coverage in media, pop songs, the whole 10 yards. However, there is one tool I'd like to say the praises of, that being my favorite of the smaller spectrum of construction vehicles, the backhoe. It's a bulldozer, but with a little arm in the back. That's a good idea. Take one thing, combine it with the other. Seems good to me. If you're still watching by this point, by now you're probably not expecting any big reward for staying this long, which is understandable. But for those who did stick around, these last two, I'm pretty sure you'll be interested in. The most ridiculous construction tool I've ever seen is the chain trencher. Chain trencher? That doesn't sound like a real thing. There's no way that's a real thing. But it is. What a chain trencher is, to put it simply, is a tank, but instead of the nozzly shooty part, it's a big chainsaw. A chainsaw is so powerful it can cut through the earth. Good luck finding that at your local Home Depot. If that sounds cool to you, feel free to look it up. It's probably the most ridiculous cool thing you'll see this week. But that's not as cool as they get. No, it gets better. Years and years ago, Lego released a Lego set of this particular vehicle, and when I saw it, I thought, that's a cool sci-fi invention. However, there's no way this could be a real thing. I mean, look at it. It looks like a robot carnival ride. How could this thing be practical in what it's supposed to do? Surely, no. This thing looks like the final boss of a dystopian future adventure game. This is not a real thing. I am, of course, talking about the holy grail of destruction machinery. The mobile oil rig saw arm plateau clearer, known as the bucket wheel excavator. Despite this thing's harm on the environment, for probably taking a lot of fuel to run, and its primary use for digging up coal, it's still a really cool thing. Stick a bucket wheel excavator and Godzilla in a boxing ring, and I'm pretty sure we know who wins. Obviously Godzilla. That was not a very good example. Alright, here's a better idea. Stick a bucket wheel excavator and any other piece of machinery in a boxing ring, and we'll see who wins. Unless the other piece of machinery is Mecha Godzilla, in which case we may have a problem. This has been Billy Mitchell's Rant, and I hope you enjoyed. Something has been brought to my attention, and for once, I'm actually going to be relevant with this internet thing, as there is a new question that is sweeping the internet and real life alike that needs to be addressed. Tenabot, do you know what that might be?
What does the fox say?
No, that's the least relevant question. I thought you came here to help me answer this question, not to destroy my reputation, which I was previously established as the guy who's not relevant. So, thanks for that. The question I'm talking about is, and you may have heard this before, are there more doors or wheels? A question that's basically impossible to answer, so of course there would be debate about it. But people don't seem so keen on answering, are there more doors or wheels? Because they're too busy arguing about what is a door and what is a wheel. Either side seems to be bending the rules in their favor in order to win an argument against someone on the other side. So I'm here to set my own rules and give my thoughts.
That's easy. I have your answer right here. See? Wheels. There are more wheels than doors.
No, the question is asking, are there more wheels or doors in the world?
I am the whole world, to me.
So, my definition of a door and a wheel. My definition of a wheel is a circular thing that has a axle in it. An axle is a metal rod that goes inside of the wheel so that when it turns, it can move something. My definition of a door is something on hinges that can open and let stuff through. I think those two definitions are vague enough that both sides can get what they want. A point I see brought up by people who think there are more wheels is that Lego is one of the biggest manufacturing companies of tires in the world, and they make so many little tires that it's basically inflating the wheel count. But no, not really. A tire and a wheel are not the same thing. A tire is the cozy that goes around the wheel so that it can propel a car or a motorcycle or something. So really, that's the only thing being inflated here. Another thing that wheel people say is that gears count as wheels. And in my opinion, I think yes, they do count. Most gears have a hole in the middle for an axle to go through, so yes, gears are wheels, which rapidly inflates the wheel count. How are the doors going to come back from this? Well, some door people say that windows count as doors, which sounds kind of stupid, but since the door people are already at such a very high disadvantage, I think we'll count windows as doors just for that. Especially once you consider that most normal doors have a doorknob, and that doorknob is attached to an axle and is circular, and therefore is a wheel. So most traditional doors cancel each other out. So really the only doors that are counting are regular doors, like supermarket motion detector doors or trap doors that have a handle. Although supermarket doors don't have hinges, so I guess they don't count by my definition, which is making me rethink my definition, which is now making me realize that this is an actual impossible question. And it was kind of dumb for me to go about trying to answer it. So historically, the only way to settle this debate is to let the door and wheel people fight it out. The wheel people get to use all the cool machines that are powered by wheels, such as, stuff like chainsaws, tanks, automatic baseball pitchers, stuff along those lines. Whereas those wheel people get to defend themselves with such luxurious items as slab of wood, slab of metal, rotating slab of metal. All great choices. I think it's a bit easier to decide who'd win on that argument. This has been Billy Nachos Rant, and I hope you enjoyed. Today is Pi Day, and not pi as in the pastry, pi as in the number. That number meaning 3.14159, and it's for some geometry thing. Now, sure, that number may be important to math and stuff, but why does it get its own day? Not everyone is into math. There's an infinite amount of numbers, and somehow this one got its own day. Here's why I think that is. Obviously, because of its name, pi. Everyone knows what pi is, the pastry, but not everyone knows what the number pi means. So having something you don't know be connected to something that you do know makes it more attractive. If some random number were to be named by a mathematician, and it was given some Greek-rooted name or something, no one would care, except obviously mathematicians, but the general public would not care. Come up with a fancy new number and name it something relatable, like ice cream, but without the E's, because apparently that's how things are named. You just take the food and remove the E. Yeah, that's going to be my example. Some mathematician somewhere, maybe in Greece, maybe not, comes up with a new number and names it Isreem. If it was an English word, that would be a pretty funny word, which makes it more memorable, which means that you're going to remember it. For example, in Spanish, the word for blackboard is pizarra, but it's spelled kind of like pizzeria. So whenever you see a blackboard and are reminded of a pizzeria, that's a good remembrance. Another reason why pi might be so popular is people like to feel smart, right? So, when you have a number that has infinite digits, all in a preset order, if you know a lot of them, and someone asks you, for some reason, and you can name them all off correctly, then you give the illusion of being pretty smart. Although if you know a lot of them in order, then you're probably already interested in geometry, and therefore are already pretty smart. On the topic of math, one thing that I learned in school that was actually pointless was, when we first started off with division, there was remainders. Now the teacher instructed that remainders were, if you were doing the division, and the number didn't come out to fit perfectly within the thing that was being divided by, then you could just write the remainder of the number you needed so that it would fit perfectly. Which is stupid, because you can't do that in an actual division question. You have to do all the decimals and stuff. And it's not even like that's a whole new step. It's just the same thing over and over again, which is what long division is. So why teach something that is just going to be discarded in a few weeks? Which I guess kind of applies to this show, because if you watched one set of 10 episodes, and then a few weeks later I told you to list off all the topics talked about, you definitely couldn't. Most of this is just flying right over people's heads, or in one ear and out the other, or some third metaphor. Not even I, the person who is talking about all this stuff, could remember the last 10 that I recorded. Probably because of the size of the breaks I've been taking between episodes. You could probably measure those numbers in an infinite amount. There, pi joke. We've come full circle. There, another pi joke. This has been Billy Nachos Rant, and I hope you enjoyed. Is that a third pi joke because sometimes pies contain nuts? That's for you to decide. Yesterday was Pi Day, which was a special day that gave me basically a free topic to talk about. Well, apparently today is the same thing. As today, March 15th, is known as the Ides of March. That's IDES. And I didn't even know that this was a thing until today. But it's kind of interesting. So my understanding is, a long time ago, Rome was ruled by this guy called Julius Caesar. You've probably heard of him. There's a pizzeria named after him. That's a good achievement. Though unfortunately for him, this pizzeria was made a long time after he died, which is actually what this day is about. It marks the day of this guy's assassination. My understanding of what happened was, there was this fortune teller guy who says to Julius Caesar, "Beware the Ides of March," which was a ceremony that was happening the next day. And Caesar completely ignored this guy because I guess he hasn't learned from fairy tales or movies that you should always trust the old man who tells the future because he's probably going to be right. Come to think of it, if this Caesar guy had invented a time machine instead of, dictating and stuff, then he could have gone to the future where he would learn that old men who tell the future are probably correct, and he'd have his own pizzeria. It's a win-win. Another red flag was that apparently, on the day of his assassination, his wife told him that she had a nightmare that he was being assassinated or something, or that he was dead. And like, that's a pretty big red flag. If two trustworthy people, one of which was not known to be trustworthy at the time, told me that I was going to be assassinated the next day, I'd probably go to that ceremony wearing like a full suit of armor. Sure, he might look ridiculous when everyone else is wearing their white robes and stuff, but better safe than sorry, which he was. I'm sure he was very sorry, but not very safe. As predicted, he was killed to death. Man, that sucks for you, dude. If only there was some way you could have seen this coming. If Caesar was aware of how dreams worked at the time, then maybe he would have been more prepared, as it is now known that dreams are a combination of all the things that you've like heard or done recently, and they're all just kind of like muddled together into a story in your head for some reason while you sleep that for some reason makes sense in the moment, but then afterward is completely ridiculous. Most of the time, that is. Who knows? Maybe his wife overheard someone talking about the assassination, and her mind just subconsciously like brought that back up in the middle of a dream. I just noticed something strange. This is the second time in a row that I've talked about an ancient European civilization and pizza in the same rant. Will this trend continue into the next episode? I don't know, but I'll be sure to report back if it does. This has been Billy Ninja's Rant, and I hope you enjoyed. Seems it did, as today we'll be talking about the most famous Greek poet, Homer. I figure the reason he's only called Homer and doesn't have a last name is because this was so long ago that there weren't enough people named Homer to warrant having a last name if your name was Homer. So congratulations to Homer on being the first Homer, if that theory is in fact correct. But the more likely reason he doesn't have a last name is because he probably isn't even real. Some historians think that Homer was not a real person at all, and was rather a stage name that multiple bards used as they collaborated and wrote these big works, which was kind of lazy of them. If they're going to come up with a fake person to write under, then at least give him a last name. R.L. Stine has 200 more books and 2 more names than you, Homer. Come on, step it up. And the 2 books that this Homer guy supposedly did write, or actually they weren't books, they were plays, but they were later adapted into books, were actually just part 1 and 2 of the same story. So if this guy was real, he wrote 1 book and then just left. The nerve of this guy. Imagine writing 1 book and then just leaving. And it was a pretty darn thick book, too. You could kill a mockingbird with that thing. Wink, wink. By this point, I should probably tell you what these books are about. The first part of the story, book 1, called the Iliad, is about this guy called Odysseus, who goes to war with this city called Troy. And Odysseus is Greek. So the Greeks and the Trojans are fighting it for like 10 years. That's ridiculous. I don't really understand how that would work. At nighttime, every night, do both sides just say, alright, that's enough fighting for today, and then they just go home and wait for the next day to start fighting again? And then do that for 10 years? That seems a bit, unorthodox. I mean, doing the same thing for 10 years has got to get boring. I mean, there's no way any of the soldiers who started the war finished it. Except, obviously, Odysseus, somehow. Guess he's just that good at fighting. So eventually he tells his buddies, after 10 years of fighting, hey, this is kind of stupid, we should stop doing the same thing over and over again, and instead think of something new. So they fake a retreat. And Troy is like, alright, so does this mean I win? And then Greece pretends to surrender. And here's the part of the story you're probably familiar with, the Trojan horse, which wasn't actually built by the Trojans, so I guess it should be called the Greek horse. But anyway, Odysseus asks this architect guy who's with them for some reason, I don't see why he would be helpful in a war, but he asks him to build a big horse out of all their boats. And so he builds a big horse. And the Trojans think that this is some sort of trophy for winning the war, and they're very happy about it. Although, let's be honest, this architect guy wasn't given that much time, so the horse probably didn't look that good, and if I were the king of Troy, I wouldn't want that thing in my city. It's an eyesore. But let's say this is best case scenario, and this architect does a good job at making a horse that looks like a horse. The king of Troy wheels it into the city, and everyone has a party. All the Trojans have a party. And then they all go to sleep, and in the middle of the night, the Greeks come out and restart the war, and win because they caught the Trojans off guard. And so that's how the Greeks defeat the Trojans, by hiding in a horse. Who knew the most effective way to be on a horse was actually inside of it, and not on top of it? Also, this is very funny. While looking up pictures of Trojan horses, or like, what people thought the Trojan horse might have looked like, because there's no, like, evidence that it actually existed, I found this picture. Now, tell me, if you were the king of Troy, and you saw this thing given to you as a trophy, would you think, there's definitely no one inside of here. Why else would they need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 windows? Probably 14 windows, because it's on the other side, too. There's no way this is what the actual Trojan horse looked like. You'd have to be a complete dummy to fall for this thing. It's an apartment building with a horse head. And in the second book, The Odyssey, even more weird things happen. This one takes place after the Trojan War, and Odysseus wants to go back home. I mean, if I fought a war for 10 years, I'd be pretty homesick too. But unfortunately for Odysseus, while trying to go home, everything that can go wrong will go wrong. He encounters all sorts of sea monsters and land monsters and goddesses and gods and a bunch of people who do drugs and just a bunch of bad things. This poor guy. But the moment I really want to focus on is the encounter with the Cyclops, which apparently the plural for Cyclops is not Cyclopses, but rather Cyclopes. So this whole time I've been saying Cyclopses to like people who want to talk about Cyclopses when I should have been saying Cyclopes. And another thing about Cyclopses that I got wrong was the name of this particular Cyclops in the story. No two people you ask this guy's name can they both say the same thing. Everyone thinks it's a different thing. And I am going to say his name is pronounced Polyphemus. And if you have a problem with that, well, you're probably the one with the correct pronunciation, let's be honest. So anyway, Polyphemus and Odysseus meet, and the Cyclops asks, "Hey, what's your name?" And then Odysseus says, "Oh, my name's Nobody." And later, when Odysseus stabs Polyphemus in the eye, Polyphemus cries out to all his friends, "Hey, nobody stabbed me in the eye." And all his friends are like, "Okay, dude, I don't know why you need to announce that nobody stabbed you in the eye. Seems like a normal thing to happen." Maybe the reason that Odysseus was considered so smart is because everyone else was so incredibly dumb. I mean, come on, Polyphemus. That's like the oldest trick in the book. If someone says that their name is Nobody, they're obviously lying. Who knows, maybe at the time this trick book was not written yet. In which case, Polyphemus can take his time machine with Julius Caesar into the future and read up on that book so he doesn't get tricked. Whoa, boom, big reveal. This was actually part 2 to the previous episode, just like the Iliad and the Odyssey. But unlike that Homer guy, I'm not just gonna release a 2-parter and then stop. I'm gonna keep going. Like it or not, Billy Nut Joe's Rant is here to stay as for now, staying like the toppings on a Little Caesar's pizza. There. Did you think I forgot the pizza thing? I definitely didn't. This has been Billy Nut Joe's Rant, and I hope you enjoyed.